do you do when you notice poor behaviour in your team? Do you ignore it and hope that it'll sort itself out? Do you steamroll in there and tell the person to sort themselves out? Or do you take a deep breath, have a private conversation with the goal of finding a way forward? As a manager, course correcting when there's poor behaviour can be one of the hardest parts of managing your team. Today, I'm talking you through how to do it. We'll discuss the foundations that need to be in place and what to do before, during and after that conversation. Let's get started, shall we? Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Project Joyful podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Tutty, your medical herbalist and high performance coach. So, hey, Project Joyful isn't just about being happy. It's about consciously creating a life you love. It's about remembering how to reconnect with your soul-centered joy. You know, that joy that comes from doing what you love, from living on purpose, and from being in a life that allows you to experience deep joy moment by moment. So hey, let's get started, shall we? Confronting poor behaviour in your team can be one of the most challenging aspects of being a manager. One of the most common reasons for a dysfunctional team is not addressing poor behaviour. Managers choose to ignore the behaviour for a variety of reasons. You may not have the energy necessary to have the conversation or to manage the follow-through that happens as a result of that conversation. Perhaps you don't want to upset the apple cart, or you're uncomfortable with situations where conflict might arise. And this may be due to being a people pleaser or believing that you're in the friend zone. Breaking news: you're not in the friend zone, you're in the boss zone. It may be because you simply don't know how to have that type of conversation, or perhaps you're worried about the consequences of getting it wrong. If that's the case, let me reassure you. If you're requesting a change of a behaviour, and you're highlighting the behaviour in an objective, evidence-based way, without venturing into the area of their identity, you can't get it wrong. So what do I mean by addressing the behaviour, not the person or identity? Our identity is who we are. It's the sum of our beliefs, our habits, our routines, the stories we tell ourselves to make meaning out of our world. And it's deeply personal. In contrast, our behaviour is the things that we do. It can be linked to our identity, but it's about what we do rather than who we are. And behaviours can be modified. Identity can, but it's a little more ingrained. So if I notice Billy is late without an explanation or acknowledgement, let's say she slides into her chair half an hour after her contracted time of work. It's the behaviour of late to work that requires feedback, rather than the blanket statement of, Billy, you're always late. Now, in case you're thinking, well, I'll let it go, it'll sort itself out. It won't. Billy knows she's late. The team knows Billy's late. The question in your team's mind is, where's the boundary here? How far will Billy be able to push this? It creates friction, a felt undercurrent of tension. Your team notices it, and they're affected by it. Everyone who interacts with your team notices it, and they're affected by it. It won't get better on its own. Ignore it, and other members of your team begin coming in later. And it's harder to reset once that train's in motion. So what do you do? Well, first of all, you need to have your foundations firmly in place. Think back to this past week. On a scale of 1 to 5, have you had the disposable energy necessary to be the leader your team needs you to be? 1 is a nope, nowhere near it. 5 is a yep, my energy is so dialed in, I've got energy to spare. If you're not consistently at a 4 or a 5, work with a coach or a natural health practitioner to get your energy to where it needs to be. The other foundational piece, know your team. Are you regularly catching up with them so that there's a relaxed opportunity in real time to talk about how things are at home and at work, how things are with their health and their well-being? Do you know their stress tell? Are you on the lookout for it? These two aspects are key to managing any team. Okay, so the foundations are in place, or you have a plan for getting them in place. Now, about Billy's behaviour. Begin with a conversation in a private space. Nothing's decided. You're simply curious, concerned and empathetic. Call out the behaviour in a factual way and then hold the space for discovery. What's causing the lateness? Listen. Ask open-ended questions. Your goal here is to help Billy get to a place where she can solve the problem. Provide clarity on the minimum standard. Perhaps it's a start time of X with a text or a phone call if something unexpected comes up. Agree a plan to correct this behaviour. How will you both know that the behaviour is now at an acceptable standard? And how long does Billy have to reach this standard? What are your expectations in relation to maintaining this standard? And what are the consequences of not maintaining this standard? Now, there may be actions that come out of this conversation for you and for Billy. Agree how you'll both follow up on these actions and what the timeline will be. Document your conversation to minimise any confusion. Behaviour that falls short of the communicated standard is best addressed in a timely manner. It's not fair on Billy if it's left hanging uncomfortably in the air, and it causes you unnecessary stress and energy if you're carrying it. Before you begin the resolution conversation, do these 3 things. First of all, breathe. Regulate your nervous system by breathing deep and breathing slow. The emotions that serve resolution are calm, focused, caring, and decisive. Go into that conversation angry, frustrated, or needing to control, and you deny the opportunity for a constructive dialogue over reacting to the emotions that are flaring in the moment. Secondly, have a plan. Objectively describe the behaviour, the minimum standard, and the consequences of that behaviour. And then listen. Coach and support your Billy in finding a way forward. And thirdly, come to this with no preconceived ideas or decisions. The ideal is to agree a way forward together. You may not have all the facts, so approach the conversation with an open mind. But be very clear about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Once you have a way forward, follow up on it and enforce what has been agreed. Addressing poor behaviour in the moment is the greatest service that you can provide your team. We all deserve a workplace where everyone is treated equally, transparently and fairly. And it starts with courageous conversations grounded in caring. And that caring is your self-care, care for that person, and care for your team. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast. Can I ask you a favour? If our conversation spoke to you today, could you please take a moment to leave a 5-star review? Your review will help people discover this podcast, and together we can create a world where there's even more love and more laughter. And if you want to hear more from the Project Joyful podcast, just click the subscribe button. Bye for now.